A devoted police horse visits the grave of his deceased partner daily, moving the entire town. In the 5th week, the animal begins to dig near the headstone and uncovers a buried box with secrets that would forever change everyone's destiny. A story of loyalty, mystery, and connections that transcend death. Prepare to be moved by this extraordinary journey. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you are watching this unforgettable account from. What happens when loyalty transcends the limits of human understanding? In a world where genuine connections are becoming increasingly rare, there is a story that challenges our perception of love and devotion. This is not just the narrative of an extraordinary animal, but a testament to the power of the invisible bonds that unite souls, even when separated by the veil of existence. Afternoons at the Fairview Municipal Cemetery were never the same after he started appearing. Punctually at 4 o'clock, as the sun begins its descent on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, the iron gates gently creak open to allow passage for an unusual visitor. The rhythmic sound of hooves on the stone path announces his arrival. Valor, a magnificent chestnut horse with a gleaming coat, holds his head high with dignity as he walks down the silent avenues between headstones and cypress trees. The birds seem to silence their singing when he passes. The wind softens its breath. It is as if nature itself respects this ritual of devotion that, day after day, moves everyone who has the privilege of witnessing it. Valor doesn't need a guide. He knows the way by heart. 23 steps past the centenary oak, a gentle curve to the right, 17 more steps to the 3rd row of graves. There, under the gentle shade of a weeping willow, lies the headstone of Sergeant Michael O'Connell, his partner for over a decade of service in the Mounted Police Unit. The horse stops before the simple gray granite headstone. He lowers his imposing head until it almost touches the cold stone where the words are engraved. Sergeant Michael O'Connell, 1965-2023, served with honor and love. Valor remains motionless like a living statue of devotion. His deep eyes, mirrors of an ancient soul, seem to see beyond the stone and the earth. 30 minutes. Not a second more, not a second less. This is the exact time he stays there, in silent communion with the man who is no longer physically present, but whose essence still seems to linger in the air around the faithful animal. The residents of Fairview, initially surprised by the phenomenon, now organize their afternoons to witness this daily encounter between life and death, between present and memory. There are those who swear that, during these 30 sacred minutes, they can feel a different energy hanging in the air, as if two souls were conversing in a language that transcends our understanding. Mrs. Gable, a 78-year-old widow who visits her husband's nearby grave daily, was the first to notice the horse's routine. With tears in her eyes, she shares her perception. In the first few days, I thought I was going crazy. A horse, alone without a rider, coming here with such precision. But then I understood. True love knows no bounds. It doesn't bend to conventions. This animal understands something about loyalty that many humans will never grasp. After the 30 minutes of vigil, Valor raises his head again, neighs softly, a sound that seems like a whispered farewell, and returns the same way. Back at the mounted police stable about 2 miles from the cemetery, he resumes his disciplined posture, as if fulfilling 2 distinct but equally important missions, serving the force and honoring the memory of his rider. What few know is that Valor wasn't like this before. After the sudden passing of Sergeant Michael, a victim of heart complications, the animal plunged into a state that many would describe as deep depression. He refused food, did not respond to commands, remained motionless for hours in the corner of the stable. Veterinarians even considered euthanasia out of mercy. It was then that Lieutenant Sarah Johnson, recently promoted to commander of the Mounted Police Unit, made a controversial decision. Sarah had been mentored by Sergeant Michael and knew the special bond between him and Valor. Against all recommendations, she allowed Valor to remain loose in the central yard for a few hours each day, closely observing his behavior. Behind those eyes is an intelligence we cannot underestimate, she argued during a tense meeting with her superiors. Michael always said Valor wasn't just a horse but a partner, a confidant. We need to give him the opportunity to find his way through grief, just as we would with any human being. It was during one of these afternoons of monitored freedom that the first miracle occurred. Without any command or guidance, Valor headed to the main gate, stopped, and waited patiently. At first, the officers thought the animal just wanted to stretch his legs. Sarah, however, saw something in the horse's eyes, a determination, a purpose. "Open the gate," she ordered, to the astonishment of her subordinates. "Let's see where he wants to go." And so it began. Valor went directly to the cemetery as if an invisible compass guided him. He found Michael's resting place with impressive precision. And there, for the first time since the tragedy, the animal seemed to find some peace. As days turned into weeks, Valor's ritual became a legend in the small town. People from neighboring communities began visiting Fairview just to witness the phenomenon. Local journalists wrote emotional articles. The internet did the rest, spreading the story to the four corners of the globe. It's an extraordinary phenomenon. From a behavioral standpoint, explains Dr. Emily Carter, a veterinarian specializing in equine behavior, who traveled over 100 miles to study the case. Horses are extremely sensitive and intelligent animals, capable of forming deep bonds, but the level of spatial memory, temporal precision, and especially the persistence shown by Valor are absolutely exceptional. We are facing something that challenges the limits of what we know about animal cognition. During the first week of this ritual, something touching began to happen spontaneously. Residents left carrots and apples near the headstone, small offerings that symbolized respect, not only for the sergeant's memory, but also for the devotion of his faithful companion. The cemetery, previously a place avoided by most residents, outside of typical memorial days, gradually transformed into a space of reflection and communion. Children who were once afraid of the place now asked their parents to watch the magic horse's visit, as they began to call it. Seniors found in the afternoon vigils an opportunity to share stories about Michael and other unsung heroes of the community. The cemetery, paradoxically, became more alive each day. The second week brought an unexpected challenge. A violent storm swept through the region, felling ancient trees and flooding entire streets. Authorities advised residents to stay in their homes. Access to the cemetery was temporarily blocked by a large tree that fell across the main gate. "That day, I confess I doubted," Sarah recalls. "I thought the cycle would finally be broken, that Valor would understand that some forces are greater than our will. How could an animal, even one as extraordinary as Valor, find an alternative path through the devastation? How could he maintain his punctuality in the face of such formidable obstacles?" The clock struck 3:50 in the afternoon, when the storm offered a momentary truce. Officers on duty noticed Valor's unusual agitation in his stable. When they opened the door to check on him, the animal bolted out, but not in the usual direction. Instead of following the main avenue, now flooded, Valor detoured onto a rarely used trail that bordered the town creek. The current, dangerously high, did not intimidate him. With a combination of strength and precision, the animal crossed at a strategically narrower point, climbed the bank on the other side, and followed through fields never before explored. It was like watching a living navigation system in action, describes young officer Ben Carter, who tried to follow Valor that day but was unable to keep up with his pace. He seemed to calculate every step, anticipating obstacles, finding passages invisible to less attentive eyes. When Ben finally managed to reach the cemetery, using a much longer and safer route, he found Valor already in position, precisely at 4 o'clock, performing his daily vigil as if no obstacle had appeared in his path. This extraordinary demonstration of determination and ingenuity ended any resistance that might still exist. Mr. Thompson, the cemetery administrator, initially opposed to the presence of an animal in the sacred field of eternal rest, as he used to say, surrendered to the evidence of something greater at work. In 30 years caring for this place, I've seen many demonstrations of love. Widows who come daily for decades, children who maintain traditions, grandchildren who honor the memory of grandparents they barely knew. But what this animal does, that transcends understanding. I'm not a man given to superstitions, but there is something sacred in this ritual, Since then, the cemetery gates are strategically left unlocked precisely at the time of Valor's visit. The third week marked the arrival of Dr. Olivia Wilson, a young veterinarian recently graduated with a specialization in animal neuroscience. Upon hearing about Valor's case through social media, Olivia immediately recognized the opportunity to study a unique phenomenon that could contribute significantly to the understanding of equine emotional intelligence. With authorization from the mounted police unit and the cemetery administrator, Olivia installed discrete cameras to document Valor's behavior during his visits. Additionally, she began monitoring his vital signs and sleep patterns in the stable. "What impresses me most," Olivia explains during an interview for a local documentary, "is not just the routine itself, but the subtle behavioral variations we observe. On cloudy days, for example, Valor tends to position himself slightly closer to the headstone. On very hot days, he strategically seeks shade, but always maintaining visual contact with the stone. It's as if he is consciously adapting his behavior to optimize the quality of his visit." The data collected by Olivia began to reveal fascinating patterns. On nights after visits, Valor showed deeper and more regular sleep cycles. His heart rate, normally elevated during routine activities, demonstrated remarkable stability during the 30 minutes of vigil, almost like a meditative state. "We are just scratching the surface of something deeply complex," the veterinarian reflects. Traditionally, we attribute behaviors like this to instincts or conditioning. But what we see here suggests much more sophisticated cognitive and emotional processes. While science sought explanations, the community prepared for the traditional Fairview Annual Town Festival, which would coincide with the first anniversary of Sergeant Michael's passing. In an extraordinary meeting, the town council unanimously decided that the theme of that year's festival would be Eternal Bonds, a tribute not only to the beloved officer, but also to the extraordinary demonstration of loyalty by his equine companion. Mayor Carol Baker, a 72-year-old woman known for her sensitivity and wisdom, proposed the creation of a statue depicting Sergeant Michael and Valor in one of their moments on patrol through the town. The proposal was approved with enthusiastic applause, and a renowned local sculptor was commissioned for the work. "This is not just the story of a man and his horse," Mayor Baker declared during the official announcement. "It is a reminder that love, in its infinite manifestations, is the most powerful force we know. It is what connects us, what gives meaning to our existence, what remains when all else is gone." News of the tribute attracted regional press attention. Journalists began arriving in the small town of Fairview, eager to capture images of the phenomenon that was already being called Valor's Miracle in sensational headlines. Sarah, concerned about the animal's well-being and the sanctity of the ritual, established strict rules for media coverage. "They can photograph and film, but at a respectful distance. No flashes, no drones, nothing that could disturb these sacred moments. Anyone who disregards these rules will be asked to leave immediately." The fourth week brought a touching initiative. The children from the elementary school, inspired by the story that was now being told in all classrooms, as an example of friendship and loyalty, asked permission to create a garden around Sergeant Michael's headstone. "We want to make the place more beautiful for Valor and for the sergeant," explained little Emily, just 8 years old, during her presentation to the school board. "Our teacher said that even those who have passed away can appreciate colorful flowers, and that Valor will like it too." Under the guidance of the science teacher, the students researched the sergeant's favorite flowers, interviewing friends and family. They discovered he had a special fondness for sunflowers, because they always look for the light, even on the cloudiest days, he used to say. With community donations and a lot of manual labor, the children transformed the area around the headstone into a vibrant garden that contrasted beautifully with the sobriety of the cemetery. On the first day after the garden's completion, something extraordinary happened. Upon arriving for his visit, Valor seemed momentarily confused by the transformation. He approached cautiously, circled the newly planted garden, and, to the surprise of everyone present, delicately plucked a sunflower with his teeth. With the flower between his lips, he positioned himself in his usual spot and completed his vigil. Before leaving, he placed the sunflower exactly over the name engraved on the headstone. In that moment, even the most skeptical person present felt a shiver down their spine, recalls Mrs. Gable. It was as if two souls were conversing through a flower. There's no rational explanation for it. There are mysteries in this world that weren't meant to be explained, only felt. The arrival of a stranger in town caused a wave of apprehension among those closest to the story. Richard Adams, a former officer who had left the force after intense disagreements with Sergeant Michael, returned to Fairview after years of absence. His presence immediately raised a red flag for Sarah. Richard and Michael had fundamentally opposite views on police work, she explains discreetly. Michael believed in building bridges with the community, in preventive and compassionate policing. Richard advocated for more traditional methods. Their arguments were legendary in the force, and when Michael was promoted instead of him, Richard requested a transfer the next day. Rumors about the reason for Richard's return spread quickly through the small town. Some said he came to claim a share of the sergeant's inheritance, alleging an old debt. Others speculated that he intended to acquire valor for a wealthy collector of prize-winning horses. Tension grew when Richard was seen observing one of the animals' visits to the cemetery from a distance. Sarah, determined to protect her mentor's legacy and Valor's well-being, confronted Richard directly. To her surprise, she found a man very different from the one she remembered. "I didn't come to disturb anyone's peace, Sarah," he said with a serenity she didn't recognize. "I came to make peace, even if it's too late." Richard explained that after leaving Fairview, he had gone through a turbulent period that culminated in a serious car accident. During his long recovery, he had time to reflect on his choices and resentments. "Carrying anger is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die," he shared. "It took me a long time to understand that." Upon learning of Michael's death through an old colleague, Richard felt the need to resolve what had been left unfinished. He brought with him a box containing medals of honor that the sergeant had received throughout his career, objects that were in Richard's care after a joint ceremony years earlier. "They belong to his family. They belong to the history of this town," he declared, handing the box to Sarah. "And I want to see this extraordinary horse with my own eyes. I always used to tease Michael, saying he treated that animal more like a son than a work tool. It seems, in the end, he was right." The tension began to dissipate, but the real test would come when Valor and Richard finally met face to face. Animals, especially those as sensitive as Valor, often perceive nuances invisible to human eyes. Parallel to these events, Sarah had initiated a therapeutic program with Valor, incorporating modern equotherapy techniques. The initiative arose from her growing concern for the animal's future. Although his daily visits seemed to provide some solace, Valor still firmly resisted accepting a new rider, an essential requirement to remain in active service with the mounted police unit. "We need to help him find a balance," Sarah explained to the veterinary team. "A way to honor Michael's memory without it preventing him from forming new bonds." Initial results were promising. In the mornings after therapy sessions, Valor was more receptive to human contact, even allowing longer grooming sessions and brief rides within the stable perimeter. However, any attempt to take him on a full patrol still resulted in stubborn resistance. It was in this context of gradual transformation that the 5th week since the visits began arrived, a week that would forever be etched in the collective memory of Fairview. The day began like any other. The autumn sun shone gently, tempering the air with that welcoming warmth that precedes winter. Valor showed an unusual appetite during breakfast, consuming his feed with an enthusiasm he hadn't displayed in months. During morning training, he responded to commands with renewed precision, as if some inner clarity had been restored. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, as always, he headed to the cemetery. A small crowd was already waiting for him, including the school group responsible for the sunflower garden, some journalists respectfully positioned at a distance, and, for the first time, Richard Adams. Sarah, who usually accompanied Valor to the cemetery entrance and then stepped away to give him privacy, immediately noticed the tension in the animal's muscles when he spotted Richard. Valor stopped for a moment, his ears pointed forward in high alert. "It's okay, boy," Sarah whispered, gently stroking his neck. "He won't bother your time." To everyone's surprise, Richard took a step forward, respectfully removed his hat, and bowed deeply to the animal. It was a simple gesture, but loaded with meaning, a recognition of Valor's dignity and importance. What happened next left everyone present speechless. Valor, after a moment of hesitation, approached Richard and gently touched his shoulder with his muzzle, a gesture that equine behavior specialists describe as a rare display of acceptance and recognition. The moment of silent reconciliation between the animal and his rider's former rival was so powerful that many of those present couldn't hold back tears. It was as if, in some mysterious way, Michael was present, blessing that improbable meeting. After this brief interaction, Valor continued his way to the headstone to perform his ritual. But, on that day, something different was about to happen. Upon approaching the grave, instead of assuming his usual position, Valor began to dig the soil with his right hoof. The unprecedented behavior immediately captured everyone's attention. At first, it was thought the animal was merely reacting to some insect on the ground or showing some form of anxiety. However, Valor continued, with evident determination. His movements were not random but precise and focused, always at the same spot, approximately 3 feet to the right of the headstone, near the base of a small bush recently planted by the children. "He's never done this before," Sarah murmured, uncertain about how to proceed. "Should we intervene?" Dr. Olivia, who was documenting everything with her cameras, signaled for everyone to keep their distance. "Let him follow his instinct," she advised. "Something is happening here that needs to unfold naturally." After several minutes of persistent digging, the metallic sound of hoof against object revealed that Valor had found something. The excitement was palpable among those present. Sarah cautiously approached, and with Valor's silent permission, as he stepped back slightly, she knelt down to investigate. There, partially exposed by the animal's digging, was a small metal box, the kind used for important documents, protected by a sturdy plastic casing. With trembling hands, Sarah carefully removed the object from the soil. "It's Michael's handwriting," she whispered, immediately recognizing the neat script on the plastic-protected paper fixed to the box lid. On it was written simply, "For when Valor shows the way." The crowd, respecting the solemnity of the moment, formed a semicircle at a distance, while Sarah, with the authorization of the cemetery administrator and in the presence of a superior officer who had been urgently called, carefully opened the box. Inside, perfectly preserved thanks to the protective casing, were several sealed letters, each with a name written by hand. There was one for Michael's wife, who had passed away 2 years before him, one for his only daughter, who lived abroad, one for Sarah, one for the mounted police unit, and most surprisingly, one specifically addressed to whoever cares for Valor. With official permission and in the presence of witnesses, the letter addressed to Sarah and the one intended for Valor's caretaker were opened on the spot. The others would be delivered to their respective recipients according to law. The letter to Sarah contained words of gratitude and professional guidance. Michael, apparently, had premeditated his possible early departure due to his family history of heart issues. But it was the letter destined for Valor's caretaker that caused the deepest emotion. In it, Michael not only meticulously detailed the animal's habits, preferences, and special needs, but also expressed a specific wish. "Allow Valor to visit my resting place regularly. It may seem like an eccentricity, but this ritual will be as important to him as our connection was in life. Horses grieve just as we do. They just manifest it in ways our limited human perception rarely understands. Valor will know how to find the way. He was always extraordinarily intuitive." The words, written months before his death, revealed not only a deep knowledge of the animal, but also an almost prophetic prediction of the behavior that had impressed everyone so much. Michael knew. Somehow, he anticipated exactly what would happen. The letter continued with an even more astonishing revelation. "When Valor begins to dig near my headstone, you will know the time has come. I buried this box during my last visit to the cemetery, for the final arrangements of my own funeral. I felt Valor should be with me that day, as he was in so many important moments. He watched intently where I placed the box. If he ever seeks this spot, it will not be coincidence but communication. The discovery had a profound impact on the entire community. The letters revealed aspects of Michael's personality and plans that few knew. His secret love for poetry, evidenced by the original verses included in the letter to his daughter. His detailed project to create a sanctuary for retired police horses. His unwavering belief in interspecies communication, which many had considered a harmless eccentricity. Richard, upon learning of the letters, felt a renewed connection with his old colleague. Michael always saw beyond the obvious, he commented, with visible emotion. We called it police intuition, but it was more than that. It was a form of wisdom that transcended formal training. News of the extraordinary discovery spread quickly beyond the limits of Fairview. A renowned documentarian passing through the region to film local flora heard about it and immediately proposed to record the complete story of Valor and Michael. During initial filming, a surprising revelation emerged through the testimonies of several officers. Valor responded to commands in sign language, a method Michael had developed for operational situations requiring absolute silence. It was something we kept within the team, Sarah explained, demonstrating some of the basic signs that the animal instantly recognized. Michael believed that this form of communication created a deeper, more conscious bond between rider and horse. Inspired by this discovery, Sarah officially implemented sign language training for the entire mounted police unit team, revolutionizing the unit's communication protocols. The legacy of Michael and Valor goes far beyond their personal story, she declared during the formal announcement of the new policy. They are fundamentally transforming our understanding of the relationship between humans and animals. 6 months passed since Valor's visits to the cemetery began. During this period, a gradual but significant transformation occurred. The animal, previously reluctant to accept any rider other than Michael, began to allow Sarah to ride him on short missions. The transition was delicate and respectful, always honoring the time and emotional space Valor needed. I'm not replacing Michael, Sarah clarified in an interview. No one could. I'm just offering Valor the opportunity to continue his purpose, to use his extraordinary talents to serve the community, as Michael would have wished. The ritual of daily visits to the cemetery continued, unchanged in its essence, but enriched by new meanings. Sarah began accompanying Valor to the headstone, staying respectfully at a distance during the 30 sacred minutes. After the vigil, they both returned together, symbolizing the bridge between past and future, between memory and renewal. The Lantern Festival, an annual Fairview tradition where hundreds of lanterns are released at dusk symbolizing hope and renewal, coincided with a special date, the anniversary of when Michael first brought Valor to town 12 years earlier. The community unanimously decided to dedicate that year's event to the pair, creating a special lantern that, when lit, projected the silhouette of a horse and its rider navigating among the stars. The image, simple yet powerfully evocative, instantly became a symbol of the town, printed on t-shirts, painted on murals, reproduced on souvenirs for tourists. The silhouette of the horse and rider eternally united perfectly captured the essence of the story that had touched so many hearts. Meanwhile, Michael's unrealized dream, the sanctuary for retired police horses, began to materialize thanks to the joint efforts of the community and anonymous donors touched by the story. The chosen land, a beautiful 12-acre property with green pastures and a crystal-clear stream, was strategically located between the police stable and the cemetery, allowing Valor and future residents to easily maintain their connections with both worlds. We call it the Michael and Valor Sanctuary, Mayor Baker proudly explained during the inauguration ceremony. It will be a home for horses who served nobly and deserve a dignified retirement. But it will also be an educational center where children and adults can learn about these extraordinary animals and the profound wisdom they have to offer us. Dr. Olivia, who continued her studies on Valor over the months, published a scientific article that quickly gained international recognition. Titled Equine Emotional Cognition and Spatial Memory, The Extraordinary Case of Valor, the study established new parameters for understanding the cognitive and emotional capabilities of horses. What we witnessed in Fairview is not just a touching story, Olivia explained during an international conference on animal behavior. It's a window into capacities that have likely always existed in the animals with whom we share this planet, but which we rarely adequately recognize or value. Valor is expanding our understanding not just of horses, but of the very nature of consciousness. On the last Sunday of winter, precisely 1 year after the cemetery visits began, perhaps the most magical of all events in this extraordinary saga occurred. After his usual visit to Michael's headstone, Valor, instead of returning directly to the stable, took a different path, clearly signaling to Sarah his intention to be followed. With curiosity and a sense of reverence, Sarah mounted the animal and allowed him to guide her. Valor proceeded with evident purpose through flowering fields and small forest trails until they reached a hidden creek in a quiet clearing that few in town knew about. There, engraved on the trunk of a centenary oak that majestically leaned over the crystal-clear waters, were Michael's initials and a small horseshoe drawing. His secret place of contemplation, his personal sanctuary where he made important decisions and processed the most intense experiences of his professional life. He never told anyone about this place, Sarah whispered, immediately understanding the significance of that moment. It was his private refuge, his sacred space. Valor neighed softly and touched the engraved initials on the tree with his muzzle. It was as if he was completing a circle, as if establishing the final connection between all the elements of this extraordinary story. The man, the animal, the memory, the legacy, the visible and the invisible. In that secret clearing, bathed in the golden light of dusk filtering through the leaves, something profound was silently shared between Sarah and Valor. A mutual understanding that, while death can separate physical bodies, there are bonds that transcend this boundary. Bonds made of love, respect, and a communication that goes far beyond words. And so, the story of Valor and Michael continues to be written, not just in books or documentaries, but in the pulsing heart of a transformed community, in the revolutionary practices of a police unit, in scientific research that expands our understanding of animal consciousness, and most importantly, in the daily journey of an extraordinary chestnut horse who, in his unwavering devotion, taught everyone a universal lesson. True love always finds a way, even when it has to cross the very veil that separates worlds.